It was meant to be the happiest time of her life, the moment she had been longing for. Zara had dreamed of this day since she was a small girl, the day she would walk down the aisle and vow her love to the guy she believed she would spend forever with. She had met David 2 years earlier, and from the minute their paths crossed, something sparked. He was pleasant, attentive, and treated her like a queen. Every gesture, every word he uttered made Zara feel like she was living in a fantasy tale. Yet, life had a way of complicated even the simplest of things, and Zara had realized that love wasn't as easy as it appeared. 2 days earlier, Zara stood in front of her closest friends and family wearing a white gown that shone with every step she made. David, waiting for her at the altar, had a grin on his face that appeared too lovely to be real. The vows said between them seemed genuine, words full of love, pledges of dedication, and a future together. But within Zara's heart, something wasn't right. She had ignored it for months, pushing off the disquiet as jitters about the wedding. But now, standing at the altar, surrounded by the applause of people who cherished her, she felt it, an emptiness she couldn't describe. She had told herself today would be the day her life would change forever. Yet, when she glanced at David's face, she couldn't resist the impression that something had been left unanswered. Zara's mind strayed back to the years before she met David, the years she had spent with Alex. Alex had been her first love. They were inseparable at college, sharing their goals, ambitions, and laughing. But time had a way of drawing them apart. They had a poisonous relationship in many respects, filled with envy, misunderstandings, and a continual push and pull. Zara had finally gone away after one too many heated discussions, one too many unfulfilled promises. It was a choice she had never regretted, until now. It was during the first few months of her marriage that Zara started to think about Alex again. She had attempted to bury those memories deep down, to go ahead with David and start a new life. But every so often, a familiar face would crop up on her social media account, or she would hear a song that reminded her of Alex, and suddenly she was back in that place. The location where love had been wild and free, but also very painful. 2 days after her wedding, Zara got a message from an unknown number. At first, she assumed it was spam or something silly, but as she opened it, her heart skipped a beat. It was a message from Alex. The message was short. "Can we talk?" Her heart raced as old feelings reappeared. The curiosity was nearly unbearable. What would he say? What did he want? She hadn't heard from him in over a year, and now there he was, back in her life like a shadow from the past. The memories came rushing back, those late-night discussions, the way he would hold her close, the way they would speak about everything and nothing all at once. Zara recalled how, even when they argued, they always found a way back to one another. They had a connection that seemed so powerful, so genuine, it was difficult to ignore. David was out on a business trip, leaving Zara alone in their new apartment. She stopped for a time, gazing at the message on her phone, before her fingers went reflexively to respond. "What's going on, Alex?" The answer came quickly. "I know this might be strange, but I've been thinking a lot about us. I'm not asking for anything, but I'd want to see you. Can I come over?" Zara's heart sped as she read those lines. There was something so familiar in his tone, something that awakened feelings she hadn't felt in so long. She gazed around the empty flat, the calm in the air a jarring contrast to the swirl of ideas in her head. She had recently married David. What sort of person would she be if she allowed herself to even ponder the possibility of seeing Alex again? But deep down, she knew the answer. It wasn't simply curiosity. There was something more. There was unfinished business. A part of Zara that had never entirely let go of Alex, a part of her that hadn't really recognized how much she missed him until this exact moment. Without thinking, she replied back, "Okay, come over." As soon as she pushed send, Zara regretted it. She knew she should have said no, known better than to open the door. But it was too late now. The past was knocking, and she couldn't pretend it didn't have a grip on her. She placed her phone down and attempted to control her breathing. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. The doorbell rang in the silence of the flat, bringing a flood of anxiety slamming through Zara's chest. She paused for a time, her hand hanging on the doorknob. This was a mistake, she thought. She had no business allowing Alex into her life again. She had recently married David. But the past had a way of sneaking up on you, even when you thought you were ready to put it behind. Taking a deep breath, Zara opened the door. There he was. Alex. He looked exactly the same, tall, with that easy grin that used to make her pulse beat. His eyes were still the same piercing blue, the type of gaze that could look right through her, making her feel like she was the only one in the room. For a minute, none of them spoke. The quiet between them was thick, packed with all the things they never said when they parted ways. Zara felt the weight of the moment, the weight of her choice, the weight of the life she was meant to be making with David. "Zara," Alex eventually said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "I didn't expect you to say yes. I wasn't sure you'd even want to see me again." Zara opened her lips to speak, but couldn't find the words. Instead, she stood aside, allowing Alex to enter. She closed the door quietly behind him, and for a while they simply stood there, in the silence of her apartment. "I didn't know who else to turn to," Alex said, his voice more vulnerable than she recalled. "I've been going through some things and, well, I thought about you. I thought about us." Zara felt a flutter in her chest. She understood what he meant. She could feel it in her bones. The years they spent together had never been easy, but they were genuine. More genuine than anything she experienced with David, she realized with a shock. "What do you want, Alex?" Zara eventually asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't afford to get lost in him again. Not now, not with all she had on the line. Alex's eyes softened, and for a minute, he was the guy she had loved. Young, full of life, and utterly hers. He drew closer, his presence overpowering in a manner Zara wasn't prepared for. "I don't know," he responded softly. I don't want to lose you again. You were everything to me, Zara." Zara swallowed hard. She had assured herself that this chapter was ended. She had married David. She had chosen a life with him, or at least that's what she kept telling herself. But standing here, with Alex so near, the lure of the past was unmistakable. "You shouldn't be here," she replied, her voice quivering as she struggled to regulate her emotions. "I'm married, Alex. I can't do this. I can't damage him." Alex nodded, his face lowering with the weight of her words. "I know. I never wanted to come between you and him. I needed to see you one final time, to know whether there was still anything between us." Zara felt a flood of remorse rush over her. She had assured herself she was over Alex. She had assured herself she could live without him. But at that moment, standing in front of him, she wasn't so sure. For a long period, they stood in quiet, the tension between them evident. The air seemed heavy with the unspoken words and the unsaid feelings. Zara's heart raced. She felt conflicted, like a part of her still belonged to Alex, no matter how much time had gone. But the fact of her marriage to David was clear. She had made her decision, and this was not part of it. But Alex wasn't giving up that easy. He took a step closer, his hand extending out, brushing against hers. The contact shot a jolt through her, one that resonated through her whole existence. The last time they touched like that, it had been a promise, a vow that no matter what happened, they would always find their way back to one other. "Zara, I still love you," Alex muttered, his voice so near to her ear that she could feel the words vibrating in her spirit. "I never stopped loving you, and I guess I always will." Zara's breath seized in her throat. She wanted to pull away, to implore him to stop, to remind him of the vows she had made to David. But she couldn't. Not when Alex's face was so near to hers. Not when she could feel his pulse. So familiar, so genuine. And then, in a moment of weakness, something within Zara gave way. The temptation was too intense. She stretched out, her hand finding its way to Alex's chest. It seemed like all the barricades she had created over the years came crumbling down in an instant. Before she could stop herself, their lips connected. The kiss was everything Zara remembered, electric, raw, and irresistible. For a little time, she forgot about David, about the life she had chosen. It was only her and Alex, enthralled in the intensity of a bond that had never totally dissipated. But even as their lips connected, the realization of what she was doing rushed back into her consciousness. This wasn't right. This wasn't what she wanted. Zara drew away immediately, her pulse beating in her chest. She peered into Alex's eyes, his face filled with a combination of desire and sadness. Her mind was a tornado, her emotions wrapped in knots she didn't know how to untie. She had made a promise. She had promised herself and David that she was done with Alex. But here he was, flipping her life upside down once again. "I can't do this," Zara muttered, her voice quivering. "I'm married, Alex. I'm married to David." Alex moved back, his face clouded with regret. I know I shouldn't have come here, Zara, but I couldn't stay away. I've never stopped loving you." Tears welled up in Zara's eyes. "I don't know what I want anymore. I don't know whether I made the correct choice." Alex nodded, his eyes sparkling with comprehension. "Zara, you have to figure that out for yourself. You can't keep living in the past. You have a life with David now, and you need to determine whether that's the life you want." His comment struck her hard. She had been hanging on to the past for so long, letting it linger in the corners of her heart. But Alex was correct. She had a life now, a fresh starting with David. She couldn't allow the errors of her past obscure the future she was attempting to construct. "I need you to go, Alex," Zara replied, her voice steadying with each syllable. "I need to figure this out on my own. I need to be loyal to myself." Alex didn't argue. He nodded, his countenance a combination of grief and acceptance. "I understand. I'll go. But just know that I'll always adore you, Zara." With that, Alex turned and proceeded for the door. Zara remained there, frozen, as he went. When the door closed behind him, the stillness that followed seemed heavier than it ever had before. Zara slumped to the sofa, her hands quivering in her lap. Her heart was split in two, one half still hurting for Alex, the other dragging her back to David, to the life they were meant to have. She closed her eyes, the weight of the choice bearing down on her chest. That night, when she laid alongside David in their bed, she couldn't escape the sensation that something had irreparably altered. She had been granted a look into the past, into the passion that had once devoured her. But now, as she glanced at the ceiling, she realized that her future was with David. It had to be. The following morning, Zara woke up with a renewed clarity. She loved David, and although the past with Alex would always be a part of her, it no longer had the ability to rule her. She needed to address her own decisions, to accept the repercussions of what she had done, and to go ahead with honesty. She sat down with David over breakfast, her hands icy as she sought for his. "David, I need to tell you something," she began, her voice firm but laced with sadness. David stared at her with anxiety. "What is it, Zara?" She took a big breath. "I made a mistake. I saw Alex again. And we kissed." David's face plummeted, his look one of amazement and pain. "Why, Zara? Why would you do that? After everything?" "I don't know," she muttered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I was confused. I was lost. But I want you to know that it was only a minute. It doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't affect what I desire with you." David gazed at her for a long minute. I don't know if I can just forget this, Zara, but I'm prepared to try. If you're genuinely devoted to me, to us, we can work through this. Zara nodded, her heart full of thanks. I am. I want to make this work. I know I've damaged you, but I'm prepared to fight for us. Over the following 6 months, Zara worked hard to repair the trust between herself and David. It wasn't easy. There were times of uncertainty, of doubting if they could genuinely get beyond the error she had committed. But as time went on, they learnt to communicate better, to tackle their concerns, and to develop together. And although Zara would always carry a piece of her past with Alex, she understood that her future resided with David. She had chosen him, and she would fight to defend the life they were making. In the end, Zara learnt that love wasn't simply about passion or perfection. It was about dedication, trust, and the desire to continue ahead, no matter how tough the path would be.